On the go? So are we. Get the IBJ Media app, your all-in-one news source for Indiana business news. Get breaking news alerts, read every story from IBJ, Inside Indiana Business, and the Indiana Lawyer, and listen to your favorite podcasts all in one place. Big news, small screen. Search IBJ Media and download the app today.
We have a very large international student population. We have underrepresented students. And I have always said, this is my favorite phrase, we are monomaniacally focused on student success, no matter where they come from, no matter where they are in their particular journey, and we have to meet them where we are.
That was Dr. Tanuja Singh, president of the University of Indianapolis, talking about how she and her leadership team diligently work to ensure their college students are supported for long-term academic and career success. And this is IBJ's The Freedom Forum with Angela B. Freeman. So, Dr. Tanuja Singh, welcome to the Freedom Forum. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I'm super thrilled to learn more about you and your career journey and what brought you to Indianapolis. It seems like it's been a really fascinating journey. But before we get started, will you please tell our listeners a bit about you, your educational and professional background, and any other factors that have led to you becoming the president of the University of Indianapolis?
Well, first of all, thank you so very much for this opportunity to talk, and especially talk about my favorite subject, which is higher education, student success. So my background is somewhat interesting, perhaps, to your listeners. I combine the sciences, I combine business, I combine strategy, I combine corporate. But really, very early on in my career, you would have called me very similar to you. I was a science nerd. Did a degree in physics, loved it, wanted to become an astronaut, and then decided I was a physicist, and I realized that I liked people more than I liked particles. So I said, what else can I do? I was very good with numbers, decided to pursue another degree in business, did really well, loved it, and then I became really curious about this thing we call student impact and student success, and decided to pursue a career in academia. Was a faculty member to start with, and I think this would probably tell your readers a little something. I always thought that students from all backgrounds were drawn to me because I wasn't just teaching in classrooms. I was giving them career advice. I was talking about life in general. And as I saw myself in that role, there were not too many women like me in leadership roles. And I thought perhaps this is something I should pursue with a little more seriousness. So over time, I progressively went from faculty to a department chair to a business school dean to a provost, and now, of course, this presidency. But the one thing that has remained constant in all my professional journey is that I have deeply cared about higher education, the impact it makes on the lives of people, and the changes you see in students as you see from their very first arrival to campus when they graduate. And that still thrills me to this day. So this was an intentional choice after a while. And I said, where could I make an increasingly bigger impact? I did a little more when I was a business school dean, then I did a little more when I was a provost. And that has defined it. But I've also worked very closely with corporate. I've worked very closely with government, with not-for-profits. So I try to bridge the gap between academia and the real world. And that's been the story that I can tell practically in every conversation, that I deeply, deeply believe in higher ed. I also believe in its impact. I believe in the types of students we recruit, and I believe in the outcomes. And really the connection between that and the real world is important.
I really love that, because certainly as a first generation college graduate, first one in my family to be able to go to college and on to advanced degrees, I certainly appreciate how that changed the trajectory of my life. That was instilled in me by my mother early on, that higher education and achieving an educational background was really the way out of poverty, the way out of so many generational curses, really an opportunity to change the path that I would have to, and not just myself, but my family, my son, and so on. So I really appreciate that. But tell us about your beginnings. Before we go into kind of your career journey, I want to know where you came from and how you have have been able to compare that to many of the places that you lived in, many of these career roles, whether it's New Orleans or San Antonio or DeKalb, Illinois. Tell us how that background, given where you come from, how that background, being in those different cities, formed your perception about moving to Indianapolis.
An excellent question. So I was very fortunate. I do want to give a lot of credit to both my parents and actually also to my grandfather. We were a family of people who believed in education. And fortunately for me, my parents both went to college and achieved higher degrees. So from the very beginning, the commitment to higher ed wasn't just a concept in our family. It was woven into our everyday conversation. But more important, I remember my dad always talked about the fact that it's not just for you. It is what else do you do with it? And he was in the government in a higher position. What he would do is he made very intentional investments in education for others. Some of them, there's a school we support in the foothills of Himalayas today, which has about 40% enrollment of women. They come there, and this place they started with 50 students. Now it's almost 400 with a 100% graduation rate. And that to me was kind of always, education is not just for you, right? As you said, it changes the trajectory of so many people. And this is the one thing that no one can take away from you. So from the very beginning, as I was in DeKalb or San Antonio or then in New Orleans and here, that's what was driving me. What is the impact we are able to talk about, irrespective of the background of the students, where they come from, whether you're first generation, whether you're a transfer student, whether you are an international student, whether you represent a certain group that's underserved, has always been underserved. And I believe that has remained constant in all schools where I have been. I became more intentional about it later, but I have deliberately sought those opportunities where I have the ability to serve a population that may be first generation more, that may be first in their family to go to college, but also may not necessarily dream of themselves as being in college. And every single strategy I put forward, whether it was as a faculty or whether it was as a slightly higher position of, say, a leadership, I always made sure that remained my North Star. What am I doing to impact? And I'll tell you, every place I have gone, I have embraced it. I have just met the most wonderful people. There are always challenges in every place, but that part about outcomes has always allowed me to enter spaces where it may not have happened in previous situations. So I've always felt that to be, hey, in Indiana, for example, our commitment is to developing talent, keeping the talent here, making sure it's a talent that comes from all backgrounds, all kinds of life experiences. And that, I believe, is a story we can all tell. And I've been able to tell the story at every place, and it's been successful.
Yeah. So tell us some specific challenges or barriers that you faced in moving to Indianapolis, again, as compared to some of the other cities you lived in the U.S. and otherwise. And then also tell us some of the benefits that are also specific to a Midwest city like Indianapolis as compared to some of the other cities that you've lived in.
I don't know if I'm going to be able to actually give you any examples of barriers. So I will tell you this. I had been to Indianapolis a few times because I was in Chicago for a long time, suburbs of Chicago. I would come here for conferences and things, and I knew about Indianapolis. And my first thing was, my biggest thing is, am I going to be able to connect with the community? And will the community welcome me as I go to this place? I have to tell you, it has been amazing. I hope more people realize how welcoming Indiana is, and Indianapolis in particular is. I have faced nothing but welcoming gestures from people. Very early on, one of my big commitments was that I needed to get to know the city. I needed to get to know our elected leaders. I needed to get to know our corporate leaders. I needed to get to know our educational leaders. And they were all more than willing. One of my things that I do very regularly, I've gotten to know a lot of people in the city. And unlike a lot of places, when they said, let me know how I can help you, they have meant it. I have called people up and say, here's where I need help. And I tell the story to others now. Now, the one challenge that remains, and I'm just saying it a little facetiously, is the traffic. It's not traffic, but the roads here. But that is, that's for everybody, and I'm just being facetious there. But I have been, I wouldn't say pleasantly surprised. I've always known about the Hoosier hospitality, how genuine or authentic people are, and that has reflected in every interaction I've had. I have to tell you, I've made both professional friends and personal friends in the city, and I'm really grateful for that. So I sing the city's praises to everyone now.
I fully agree with you. That has been my experience as well. I tell so many people, I think that's what makes Indianapolis so unique is that there are so many people who are not from here who have been able to genuinely and authentically integrate into the fabric of this city and what gives it pulse, what makes it moves and continue to elevate and accelerate. And I'm not convinced every city allows for that. I shared the same experience that when people tell you, hey, call such and tell them I sent you, or please call me and tell me, they genuinely mean that. And I just don't think every city kind of allows that informal welcome into the city and again into very connected circles in a way that Indianapolis has at least shown me that it does. And it sounds like you've had that experience also.
I've had a wonderful experience. Let me just share another story. So last week we hosted a very important summit. It was an AI summit, and it was really AI that works for people and societies and for cities and students and all. Two of our keynote speakers one came from California, one came from North Carolina. They are both global people, globally known for their expertise. Both of them asked me this question. Babak Hojat, who works for Cognizant, he said, Tanuja, are people really genuinely this nice and this helpful in Indianapolis? He experienced it in one day. And then Justina Nixon Santil, who came, she said, people here are just incredible. And that's something you can't fake, right? That is something you can't fake, being nice, not just at the airport, but at the hotel, the person who helps you down the line. It has just been a genuinely welcoming place for me. Lots of people, lots of places you go to, they are friendly, but it's hard to make friends. Indianapolis is not just friendly. It is a city that allows you to develop deep, meaningful friendships. I've heard from so many people who came here, I came here for 3-4 years and I thought I was going to leave. 30 years later, they're still here.
Right.
And that's our story. And I wish more people would tell that story. I'm sold on Indiana and Indianapolis.
Yeah, so I want to refer back to your very dynamic background because you talked about this in your intro, and I was fascinated by this, mostly because I don't have a career in academia. I always assumed that you had to have a background in formal education, particularly to ascend the ranks to which you've reached in your academic career and in academia. So I was super shocked to see the STEM background and then the business background and all of that culminating into higher ed leadership. So tell me if you had any challenges in maneuvering those kind of academic backgrounds and degrees to fit into leadership in academia, or did it make sense? Because in my experience, this is a very unique background, and I'm interested to hear how you were able to make it all work to get to the career path that you clearly really enjoy and are passionate about.
I'd like to be able to claim that I'm so unique, but really I have 2 masters and a doctorate, and they are all in disciplines that are part of. So if you look at my master's in physics, that is a very logical, analytical field that really looks at the science of the world, right? After that, the business background really helps you sometimes just explain it to the world that works in numbers. My doctorate is in marketing with a focus on international marketing as well as strategy and data analytics. So throughout my career, I've always looked for opportunity, and it's not that unique. There are a lot of people academia, before I became an administrator, I used to publish a lot. In the traditional way, I did R1 level research, I got published. And those were important papers and important things. But what attracted me and a lot of educational leaders, particularly in higher ed, is this ability to translate that information about strategy to actually developing a strategy and delivering it for an academic institution. So in every single role, those careers have in fact helped me, and they have in fact allowed me to be more attractive to employers. So when I came as a business school dean, they loved the fact that I had a diverse background in the sense that I was both a scientist and able to speak the language of business. When I became a provost, they liked the fact that I loved numbers and I was able to speak across the curriculum. So it wasn't just the business language I was speaking. And then as a president, as you know, this is a CEO role in every way. You are looking at strategy, you're looking at impact, you're looking at outcomes, you're looking at working with very different groups of people. And those skill sets are fairly constant. They are across leadership roles. And even when I was a student leader. I worked in those areas. So those have helped me. And the adjustment it has not been the adjustment. It is, in fact, I believe that these diverse skill sets have helped me have a better story, have a better connection with very different faculty from arts and sciences and business and engineering, because I understand their language and I can speak to it a little more, perhaps intelligently. Not always, but mostly.
Yeah. So the different roles that you have held up until this point, you mentioned you are a faculty leader in Northern Illinois University, a dean and professor of marketing at St. Mary's, which was in San Antonio, a provost, a senior VP of academic affairs at Loyola. As you went to each of those different positions or roles, what did you learn about yourself as a leader that you believe you're currently implementing in your current role as president of University of Indianapolis?
Excellent question. The thing that I believe that I bring, I have been told, I imagine a future. I'm able to use these skills to say, one, the ability to envision a future that requires the kind of skill sets that I bring, but also my team would bring to the table. That skill is required in any leadership role. So as a faculty leader, as a dean, what is not just today, but what are we looking at 3 years, 5 years, 7 years down the road? And I have constantly educated myself on the trends that are happening that would make our students successful. So I am just like our students, I'm a lifelong learner. I take on new challenges, but that one skill set about being able to envision, but more important, being able to bring people with you. Because it's great to be able to envision a bunch of stuff, but if you can't convince people, if they don't see themselves in that role, it is completely, it's not as effective. So I have at least seen over the years that I have the ability to build a great team, to bring people with very different backgrounds and work towards that vision that is rooted in the future, not just the present. And I believe that's true of any leader. I've just been very lucky that I've had some amazing people work with me, because the work I do is truly a reflection of such work that happens through my team, through other people. And that's been true in every single role that I've held. None of this has been achieved by Tanuja Singh alone. It's a group of people that are amazing in their skill sets, and I've just been able to bring them along with me.
Now it's time for a break.
Get caught up on the state's top business news every business day with the Inside Indiana Business Radio On Demand podcast. Available now at InsideIndianaBusiness.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
We're back with Dr. Tanuja Singh, president of the University of Indianapolis, on this episode of the Freedom Forum with Angela B. Freeman. So beyond your team, that's what I really appreciate about speaking with leaders, because often, and most often, they always attribute so much of their success to their teams. And we know that's part of the task with any leader, is making sure you have a good team behind you. But I'd like to know, and I always find this a bit intriguing because it's one thing to have these super amazing titles and roles, but I'd like to know more about the day-to-day. What does that look like? Okay, you're the president of this academic institution, but what does that look like on a day-to-day basis? What are you responsible for? How do you wake up every day making sure that you make positive change for the university? And then I appreciate that you've been in your role not too long, a few years. I'd like to know, what impact have you made to date that you're particularly proud of? And what do you see for in the future?
Again, long question, and I have hopefully a good answer for all of them. The first part that you asked about, a day to day, what do I do? I wish there was a day that I could say, take a look at, this calendar. My day is very diverse, depending upon the week, depending upon what I am trying to accomplish. But everything I do is driven by our strategic plan. So our strategic plan is not just something we developed and said, yeah, now it's going to hide in some cabinet. That's what drives every decision we make. And I look at my calendar and I said, what part of my strategic plan am I working towards today? The way I plan my day, the way I do these conversations with leaders like you, the way I meet with people, they're all driven by that. So it's really different every day. So I'll give you an example. Last week, we had the AI Summit. We hosted the Independent Colleges of Indiana on our campus. I was speaking at 2 other events, and I was talking to donors as well as deciding some key things about strategy that we're implementing in certain areas. So my point being that one of the things that makes this job particularly enjoyable, that it is generally every day is different, but it is not different as in I'm not responding to stuff like at the spur of the moment. It is planned. When I speak with students, that is towards a goal. In fact, tonight I'm meeting with our presidential scholars and I'm having dinner with them after this. So it is engagement with students, engagement with our faculty, engagement with our external community, which is a really big part of my portfolio, talking about our donor, talking with our donors, working with my cabinet to make sure that they have all the resources and they have feedback on a regular basis to make sure that I am providing them with whatever feedback, input they need from me. But everything is, I could technically look at my calendar and say, this week I spent this percentage of my time looking at this strategic priority for the university. I am that focused. And I believe that has resulted in us being a much more focused institution. So on July 1st, it'll be 3 years. And I'm really proud to say that the progress we've made, which is really a function of the amazing team I have, is significant. So I'll start with just our commitment to addressing learners where they are and learners of all kinds. One of the big things that we know about Indiana, we have a talent shortage. We have people that are perhaps have gone to school for some time but not finished. We have people that might be wanting to just upskill and reskill their skill sets. There are people who want to get certificates. They don't fall into the traditional category. So we started a whole new division called UIndy Online and the CEAS Institute, which has resulted in people coming to us no matter what their career journeys are. People are coming back to us and say, hey, I need one more degree, or I just need to finish up something I started. So that part has been very, very successful. In fact, we started a Women's Leadership Institute that is in the second cohort now, and we have been recruiting amazing people for that. So that part has been very, very important. The other part, our fundraising has increased significantly because when people say they're doing things that actually matter to the state, matter to me, we have significantly increased the gifts we bring to campus. But if you had to say, and we are career outcomes have increased significantly in the past 3 years. We were doing well, but now our placement, or what we call successful outcomes for our students, have increased significantly. We are placing more students. More of them are going to graduate school or getting doctorates, and our rankings in some areas have gone up significantly. And it's been intentional. But I will say credit goes to my team, because once we focused on the strategic plan, everything that we are doing is being driven by those ideas and those priorities, and we hold each other accountable. They hold me accountable. I hold them accountable, and that has been really, really good. I'll just share, this one statistic I like. Just our coverage in the media has gone tenfold. just because of the kinds of things we are doing that are attracting government and they're attracting not-for-profits, they're attracting our corporate partnerships have gone up. So those we are really proud of, but I will be the first to say the credit really goes to my team.
So obviously you and the university are moving in the right direction. You're moving where you'd like things to go. I'm wondering, how do you personally navigate? We hear a lot about being your authentic self, being able to navigate your own authenticity, particularly as a president of an academic institution. I'd like to know how you are able to navigate and personify your own authenticity in a way that also gives your students and your faculty the bandwidth and the green light to do the same in a way that they believe is really valued and appreciated by the institution.
So if you look at our student population, we have about 33% of our students who are first in their family to go to college. We have a very large international student population. We have underrepresented students. And I have always said, this is my favorite phrase, we are monomaniacally focused on student success, no matter where they come from, no matter where they are in their particular journey, and we have to meet them where we are. We have a program that specifically addresses the needs of neurodivergent students called BUILD. It is one of the best programs in the country. And my job is to make sure that we provide the resources available that will make them their best selves, however they imagine their best selves to be. And my job is to make sure that we provide resources for their success, that when they are in the university, they feel like they belong, no matter where they come from, no matter where their journey is taking them. And that's a very intentional commitment to student success. I talk about it in all my conversations with students. I talk about it in our student retention data. UIndy students, majority of them when they graduate, a lot of them, particularly the ones who are native to the United States, they live and work and give back to Central Indiana. We have a large percentage. So we are meeting the talent needs of the state, the city, and of course the world. At the same time, I want to make sure that we are providing them with the skill sets. Not everybody comes to college prepared. So this year, one of the things we are doing for those students who may be less prepared for college, we are having them come to campus about a week early so that they can understand a little better how to do college. And that's a commitment we make in their retention, make sure that not everybody knows what a college classroom or a college conversation looks like. Simple things that you would think people would know, but not everybody does. My job is to remove the barriers that they find to success. And my job is to provide them with every possible opportunity and equip them with the tools that will make them successful in the workplace.
Yeah. So through IBJ's Women of Influence program, which we've both been a part, I recently had the pleasure to visit the University of Indianapolis. That was the first time I'd been there, and we got to tour the nursing school new simulation labs. And it was such a cool experience. It was really enlightening to see how new technologies are being utilized by the institution to train our next generation of healthcare professionals like nurses. So I'd like to know what other departments at the university really get you excited, particularly appreciating your kind of STEM and physics background. What gets you excited about or where you're seeing student or alumni really engage and support in a way that really encourages not just the university and the faculty, but students to continue to engage, to see it through, to get to see through those 4-year and even often beyond 4-year academic degrees to make sure that they're successful in whatever career path they choose?
So one of the big commitments we made in our strategic plan is to ensure that every student, whether they're studying nursing, whether they're studying business or engineering or communications, that they would get what we call generally as an experiential learning in their curriculum, which essentially means that our students, before they ever graduate, practice what they have learned in a classroom. You mentioned nursing. We also do a disaster simulation. which if you came there, it looks exactly like a disaster simulation where our nursing students are assessing the people who have been affected by the disaster. Our criminal justice students are actually looking at, hey, what do I need to do? What investigation I need to conduct? We have engineering students there who are assessing what went wrong with this particular case. We have business students looking at the risk management aspect of it. So everything, and this is, of course, an extreme example, but our business students, for example, regularly work with companies. Our engineering students regularly work with companies. We have a student-run TV station and we have a radio station where they practice what they are going to do in the communications department. Our biology students are going all over the world doing research. I believe the difference that a UIndy education has is that every single discipline, we are focusing upon getting the students the experience they will likely have when they graduate. No matter whether you're doing philosophy or political science, our political science students go with our professor to our local legislators, are talking about the issues. And I believe that very applied learning is what gets our alumni excited because alumni come back. I have alumni coming back and talking about what they did in the business world or the engineering world or the nursing world. And that the ability to patch that, classroom to the real world, that part is very, very unique. And we don't do it as a one-off. This is part of our promise when they're going on international study. We have study abroad trips where students are going and learning about history from the perspective of being in places that we read about in books. So that part, I think, makes our alumni excited. That's why they're engaging with us more. And that's where I believe our sweet spot is in a very applied, very focused, very student-focused learning at every level, from the undergraduate all the way to our doctoral level.
And that's really critical for hitting the ground running once you actually get that academic degree and are ready to get into some type of actual position. I remember graduating from college and not having that experiential training and learning. And it was challenging because you come out, you've got your degree, but all you hear is, well, you don't have any experience. You don't have any experience. So being able to give students that kind of experiential learning and training while they're still in school, particularly for careers like nursing, where I've talked to so many people. I mean, I planned to be a doctor until I realized the whole physicality, the bodily fluids, all that's a real thing. So being able to get some real life experience with some of those things before you commit to this being a career path and really ensuring that you can handle some of the more practical aspects of some of these careers before you commit to them is extremely important for academic and real life success later on.
Absolutely. And we work very closely with corporate world, with everybody from a not-for-profit to government. So we have a very active employer engagement program. And what we are asking employers, and they have been very responsive, come to us way before you are ready to hire the people. Come to us when you want us to give them the skill sets that you're going to look for as these employees come to your organization. So we have a partnership with Roche, and we have several other partnerships where they come to us early. They engage with our students, whether by providing internships or conversations. And these are not just, again, as I said, one-off. That ability to bring the outside world into the classroom is as important. We host thought leadership summits. Almost every week, there's something going on. We also have ancillary things that we do, which are part of UIndy. They may not be degree programs, but they're very, very close to us. So we have CEL, which is really in the educational sector. We have the Center for Aging and Community, where we are learning from people about what does it look like. Indiana has a growing population, which is aging significantly faster than the rest of the country. How do we get the thought leadership going in these areas so we can prepare the teachers for tomorrow? We can prepare the caregivers for tomorrow. We can prepare the physical therapists and the engineers and the business people for tomorrow and the communication specialists. And I believe that seamless integration into our curriculum is what defines what we do more intentionally. And it's not something we just dreamt up. It was part of our strategic priorities, and we deliver it in every single academic offering.
Yeah, so how, as you are preparing the students for real life, real world experiential careers and roles in the business community. How critical is it? You talked about, who your student population is, how diverse it is from backgrounds, underserved populations, to also just first-gen students who've never been in college before. How critical is it that the university also helps to mimic or demonstrate some of the inclusive leadership that often so many of these students are looking for when they're looking to choose roles or opportunities, and particularly when they're choosing whether they're going to stay in Indiana and build a career and a family or go elsewhere and build a career and a family, is not just having corporate opportunities that are available, but also what will that life look like? And so how are you at University of Indianapolis also helping students recognize and appreciate that Indiana is not just a great place to get an academic degree, but also a great place to utilize that degree and stay here in order to retain that talent within the state?
An excellent question again. When we invite speakers, when we engage with people from the outside world, we bring those people that look different from you, that have a different background. We bring graduates from our Build program to speak with our students about the opportunities available. As I've shared before, we have transfer students who come potentially with very different backgrounds than our traditional 18-year-old students. So the representation matters a lot. And I'm very grateful that our faculty mimic that as well. When they bring speakers, when they bring in people from the outside world, they look like the outside world. People that I invite to speak at the Women's Leadership Institute are about as different from each other, as you can imagine. So I believe it's a responsibility for them to see themselves in that role and see this is possible for me. And every kind of population. You are intellectually diverse. You come from very different background. You have very different life experiences. In addition to students being from different countries, we also have faculty that come from all over the world. And that makes a big difference on our campus. When you walk around and you've been there, this seems the norm, not the exception. We do look like the United Nations because we are. And it's not something that we do this intentionally, but it has overall evolved organically. So it's become the norm. And our students see students who are very different from you, both in physical ability, perhaps even intellectual ability. And to us, we meet you where you are, anywhere, anytime for life.
As we begin to wrap up, I just would finish with asking, how can Indiana leaders, business leaders, community leaders, executives, etc., continue to make sure that Indiana is compelling for students coming out of University of Indianapolis or any university here in the state? Because clearly we need to do a better job, as good of a job, if not a better job, in not just bringing students here for our academic institutions, but keeping them here, retaining that talent in the state. And certainly you are doing your part as academic institutions to recruit talent here. But what can our business leaders do to make sure that once they leave the academics, they do want to stay in Indiana and use the learnings that they've gained in our wonderful academic institutions and instill that and invest in that here in the state?
I already discussed one aspect, but if you think about our young people, they're not simply looking for a great job. They're looking for a quality of life. These young people are going to stay here. They're going to get married. They're going to start a family. Childcare is a big challenge in all of Indiana. I was just reading an IBJ piece just recently. That is not just a family decision. That's a business decision, right? Quality of life in terms of how navigable our streets are, where you are living. Does it have green space? Does it have enough opportunities for doing the kinds of things that young people do? We have a lot of them available. It's not, but some of them sometimes can appear to be very dispersed. And business leaders, when they make this, when they are recruiting people, they need to engage with universities sooner than when they are ready to hire them. From the very beginning, And because there is research that says, hey, if somebody has worked with you as an intern, they are 3 times more likely to stay with you afterwards. But they have a responsibility to also showcase Indiana and the Indianapolis quality of life. I have found this to be a very high quality of life from a safety perspective, from entertainment opportunity, from food. We need to tell a better story, but then it's not just the job of, say, the chambers, right? It is all of our jobs. When we talk about Indiana, we can't just talk about a company, but we can talk about the opportunities that are available, and for the businesses to invest systematically into things like childcare, into things that make living here easy, because this country is aging. The state is aging faster than the country. We have near full employment in the state. If we want to bring people here, we need to all be collectively telling the story, but also making an intentional investment in the quality of life aspects that I just discussed.
Yeah. I thank you so much again, Dr. Singh, for being here. Are there any last parting words or any final thoughts you'd have as we wrap up this episode?
I would invite all your leaders to, I'm sure they are all looking to see how might they continue to be involved in lifelong learning. Every data that I see from every single organization says that higher education is actually going to be more, not less important. It is going to be more impactful. In fact, by the year 2030, majority of the jobs, a lot of the jobs would require a post-secondary education. So I'm asking people to invest in yourself, but also help us tell the story of why higher education is important for the competitiveness of a city, a state, and indeed a country. I came to this country not for economic reasons. I came here because it has the best education system in the world, and we want to keep it this way. So investment in higher education and really talking about higher education as the one thing that pays the highest dividends is really important, not just from academic leaders' viewpoint, but from business leaders, from our government leaders, from our elected officials and everybody else. And that is one thing that I would invite people to remember.
Dr. Singh, thank you so much for being on this 57th episode of the Freedom Forum. Thank you so much.
It's been an honor. Thank you.
Thank you again to Dr. Tanuja Singh, and thanks to you for joining us on this 57th episode of IBJ's The Freedom Forum with Angela B. Freeman. Please come back next month for another conversation about diversity, equity, and inclusion in the Central Indiana business community.
I'm Tiffany Souter, mom of 4, wife, entrepreneur, and host of the Life of And podcast. For years, I built my life with brute force, a successful business, a growing family, and absolutely zero margin. I was tired, snappy, and felt constantly behind, and I was too afraid to admit it. Everything changed when I stopped trying to do more and started building systems that actually worked for my real life. If you too are craving more peace, more presence, and just more time for you, I'd love for you to join me on the Life of And. Subscribe now on your favorite podcast app or listen at ibjpodcast.com.
The IBJ Media Podcast Network is the soundtrack of a growing state. Indiana is on the move, and you can hear it happening on the IBJ Media Podcast Network. We bring you the voices at the center of our economy, our courts, our companies, and our communities. Subscribe now and be part of the conversation that's building Indiana's future. Find all of our shows by searching IBJ Media in your podcast app or visit ibjpodcasts.com.